All right. So without further ado, let me start it. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to really focus on colorists that work in long form and how to cut time drastically. I mean, we are basically looking at about 80% reduction in time necessary to achieve the same amount of work, basically. So what we really are doing is we are reducing the amount of time necessary to get to a point where you have fully balanced your scene, where everything has got the look that you want, where you have applied all the secondaries as well and all the windows necessary for that to happen, where you have keyframed the grades as well. You'll see we can do that now as well. So like I'm really going to work on a scene now in front of you, and you'll see the amount of time it's going to take me to do it. It's very, very short, and the faster also you get with the software, the faster you become in general. So think of it like as a basically something that in large facilities, it's very common that the senior colorist has got an assistant who basically, so the senior would adjust the one frame, would set the look on one shot, and then the junior would go and basically match the rest of the scene, finish everything. And then, senior colorist would come, do the review, do all the other work. Then the client would come, give feedback, and so on. Now, think of it, this is like a tool that is just going to make you be senior, because you're going to have an assistant, and that assistant's an AI. So I'll start sharing my screen. So basically, my beginning is in DaVinci Resolve. So what I got here is, a scene. You've seen it before. I call it the church scene, right? It's all shot on Arri Alexa. And basically, let's say this is just, a scene. And I really also recommend that when you guys work, in your work, that you always split your whole project into scenes, and then you do grading scene by scene. It's just really helps you, like a work in chapters, right? So first thing I do is I build a node tree, okay? And let me show you how I build this node tree. It's quite interesting, actually. So what I'm doing is I'm here combining now how I'm working with a plugin and a desktop version at the same time. So let me explain you what it is. So the first node is, of course, an IDT, right? So nothing's really changed that. Then I have a CDL, and this CDL I will automate. Then I have AI node, and what I did is I already applied a Colourlab AI plugin on it, but I'm not doing anything with it. I just applied plugin, and the plugin is basically just going from Arilog-C to Arilog-C, and it's not really matching or doing anything like that. It's just sitting there, right? Then I have a trim node. I always have a trim node post plugin, because that's where I can actually adjust things that come out of the plugin a little bit better. Whatever I adjust in front of the plugin, I can use for my reference matching, and whatever I apply afterwards is me correcting to what output plugin has made. Then I have a showlet. As always, this is going to be log-C to log-C showlet that will come here later. Then I here I have a curves node. I always try to do any kind of saturation changes or anything like that rather with curves, or sometimes I did a little contrast or something like that with curves. This node doesn't have a real function at the moment, but can be anything. I can maybe just need an extra little bit function there. Then I put qualifiers. You'll see in my work I don't really use a lot of qualifiers, and this is just a habit I got from working on for large screens. Because when you start working for large screens, for cinema, qualifiers can very quickly give away that you are, using them, because they're not always precise, right? It's very hard sometimes to qualify and be very clean about it. And so I really try not to really rely on qualifiers as much as I can. I try to get my primary and my showlet to do everything I want with the skin and everything like that, so I don't have to do a lot of qualifying. But here, maybe I will do some skies, or there's sometimes some elements that you just really need to pick, right? But they are not my main favorite tool, such as And then I have a set of windows. I normally get away with 4. I sometimes need to do more, but most of the time I work on stuff that is shot pretty well, like, that is shot that is in a good state and has been lit, with some thought. So I don't need to completely reinvent it, and so 4 windows is good. And then here I have like a node that is like a scene correction node, right? So what this really node does is basically like, sometimes I would grade everything. I would grade a scene, I would match everything, and then I would feel like, maybe it's a little too dark, maybe it's a little too warm or something like that. And I want to change everything in this particular scene. So this is a scene adjustment node. Sometimes I have a more than one of these adjustments node, because if I'm doing a review with client, then I will have more than one, but for the moment I just left it here. In terms of my windows, I'm just going to put them here up so that you see what I really do with them. They're really integral part of my work. Like, I rely on windows heavily in order to be able to, get to the place where I want. So there is always this kind of, inevitable vignette. I not necessarily that I want to use it on every shot, but I do have always a place for vignette. And also notice I'm always using a lot of softness. Then here I'm usually putting a soft light or spotlight. That's really something that helps me elevate. And as you can tell, I really, really like to work very, very softly again. DaVinci, I find it by default doesn't really allow me to do so. So I always whack my softness super high, and that's especially important for HDR grades. You don't really want HDR grades to kind of, show any windows. And then here I would have like a grads, and these grads, I actually, even used them before they existed as a tool. I remember before DaVinci had a grad, my teacher always used to show me this trick where he builds a grad and then overlays the grad on top of it. And it just used to do this magical stuff with an image. So, I have been literally using grads, from when I was starting to grade, back in 2007, 8. And I mean, there was none of these tools in DaVinci back then. So, I'm so happy that they have kind of added them in the grads now, just a click away and so on. So yes, these grads are really, really important. They help us create a little dimensionality. They're very, very useful. So that would be basically my node tree. Okay. So then what I do is I grab this as a still, and then I'm going to export it. And I will say, okay, this is my JPEG, and I'm going to call it something like my AI node 2, so basically just give it a node that you can recognize it, right? And then I'm going to go into Colourlab AI. And in Colourlab AI, I will go first into my project settings. And then in DaVinci Resolve Sync, I will say, hey, can I please load a custom DRX? And now the good news is, by the way, what we organized with this latest upgrade is we have really reorganized all the software to work together and all of your metadata to live in one place. So you see, we have a now folder called user DRX. And this folder is where all of your DRXs that you ever use, your different custom settings, are always saved in that place. And they are also shared then, with other applications in case necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just import the one node that I just created, right? And basically I'm going to set it so that this is the node that I'm using. But that node is now going to get saved. So in other projects, you're always going to be able to click on it and see what other node trees you have. So you can have more than one node tree. Something I change node trees. If I'm working on this project, that project, I'm kind of, that's the beauty of a node tree. As much as it's fixed, it's okay to sometimes adjust it, right? So then I'm gonna go and set up my IDT. So let's have a look. So my 1 is IDT, 2 is CDL, and 5 is Sholat, right? So I'll do that. So 1 IDT, 2 CDL, 5 Sholat, and then my ODT. I'm actually not going to use the ODT that is going to come from the Colourlab. I will do this all on the timeline level later on. So what I do, the way how I avoid having the ODT being sent to me is simply by putting a number that's higher than the number of the highest node. So let's say this is 18. So I'm going to go and put the number 20. So basically, it's going to just miss it. You can't apply it because the node 20 doesn't exist. Okay, so that's basically the first thing you want to do. You want to set your node tree that you want to send back to DaVinci once you do the work. Okay, so then I'm going to fetch. Okay, so the fetching then starts, right? I am at the moment using my automatically detected IDT, and that works pretty well, you know. But again, guys, if you are like, you know your camera or something like that, you don't have to do this. You can just go and select everything and say, I don't know, I'm using this or that one. But I'll stick with the auto just in case, like, you know, for the moment. And then in my on my output, I really am gonna go into the ARI, you know, like I just love, you know, this kind of skin tones that I get with ARI ODT. Okay, so then the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and select everything. I'm gonna go and just use this image here, you know, like because I want something warm to apply to everything, and I'm just gonna go and say match. All right, so I do know, you know, that roughly this scene has to be warm. I do know that you know this particular image reference, even though it's got nothing to do with my content, has got these gorgeous, warm golden hues, which is always hard to create if you know, like when you're grading manually, like, you know, it's just always like really very difficult to get to that beautiful golden hue, which this really did already, right? Look at it, right? So it gave me this golden hue, but that's not where I'm going to stop. I'm going to go and say, okay, listen, I don't mind, but this is a little bit too warm for me. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to click an FPE on. An FPE I like to use when I'm really going for that film emulation look, and FP stands for film print emulation, and it's going to limit my gamut to the native gamut of film, you know, because all these cameras can shoot much wider, no problem at all. And sometimes I do want to have a very, you know, wide gamut, very high saturated image. But in this case, this is like a very particular film look I'm going for, or I'm going for natural filming. So you see what I do is FPE, I kind of just reduce that kind of, you know, the richness of color, which kind of gives it away that it's a digital camera, right? And then I'm going to go and apply here only a negative stock. And I'm going to look for negative stock that gives me something cold. And I think I already found it actually here with an XT250. So my XT250 gave me like a little bit, like it cooled it down a little, but that's not what all I'm going to do. I'm going to also use a little bit my subtractive, right? And then just, you know, a little bit cool it down that I kind of, you know, with my magenta and my you know, cyan, I'll just bring it down. So you see, I have actually very warm image. This is what I started with, but this is kind of what I'm doing with a look designer. And then also I'll correct it a little bit with push and pull, right? So that I don't want to necessarily change. My look designer shouldn't be changing the exposure overall, right? It just should kind of, you know, apply like a little, you know, little color. Yeah, it's good. It's now I'm better, right? So it really like killed that. You know, that feeling that was originally giving me. And then another trick I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and open little crunch. I loved it, you know, just because that's normally how film works, you know, like this is the biggest difference I find is that kind of beautiful shadow, you know, kind of the shadows just kind of punchy a little bit on a film, right? And that's not what digital cameras have, which is actually always sometimes positive. We like to have a detail in the shadow, but because I'm going for filmic look, I'll just open a little bit more of the crunch. So there we go. And then I'm gonna go and say save it. So now it saved it for me. And then I'm gonna go right mouse click and say apply to all, right? So then what I did now is I basically just apply this show light to every shot. And because I'm kind of, you know, I matched everything, and it's not perfectly matched, but that's okay. I'm just really getting into ballpark here. I have applied like a CDL that brought everything into a really nice kind of ballpark. I got my show light, which is not the finished look. I just applied something that gives me an overall feel, right? And I'm now good to go. So you'll see why I'm not doing complete grading here. You understand now why I'm doing it in steps. Okay, so what I do next, and then I'm gonna go and say, hey, push it to resolve. So then it's gonna go do that. And basically what it's going to do now is going to apply that node tree I created, but it's going to populate everything, you know, with the nodes that I've just done, right? And it's all here. It's all kind of there, but it doesn't look exactly like we want it. And the reason is because we don't have an ODT. So what I do now is I go onto timeline because my ODT is a consistent, and I'm going to open two nodes. The first node is going to be for grain. I'm going to still work grain on the log, and basically the second node is going to be my ODT node, and for that I'm going to use Look Designer. And again, I'm going to go and select it to be Rec 709A. And then I have already an idea what I like in terms of this kind of print stock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for this, Kodak Vision Color Print 2383. This is the one that was scanned very recently. So it gives me straight away that gorgeous, kind of, this kind of gorgeous filmic kind of, yeah, I love it. The moment you do it, it just, feels so good. And basically that's kind of it, for the moment. I don't think I need to do any more. Maybe I could think about, doing a little bit more of contrast curve. Let's see whether that's going to help me. Oh, this is a little bit too crunchy, right? Yeah, it's too crunchy. No need for it. No need. I'm just going to leave it like this. All right. And then what I'll do on the first node, I'm going to use GrainLab. Okay, and then what I do with GrainLab is that I basically go and say, hey, listen, I want to work not in JPlog, but in Arilog C. I'm going to have to just quickly, guys, zoom in so that you can see really what's happening. So the negative grain, I'm going to leave on 35 because this is shot on 35. I'm imagining it is shot on 35, right? But what I'll do is I'm going to enable oversampling because I don't want, my grain to be in your face. Like if I disable print grain and just show you this one, right? So look, so like this is just, this is just basically my grain, right? You see how it kind of just has like a, it gives that grainy feel, right? But it's not like killing it. And it fills all the gaps that, digital sensor missed. It creates all that little beautiful texture that you get from the film emulsion without introducing the noise of grain, right? So what we want is we want this absolutely finest particle emulation that you normally get in a film emulsion, that you want it, the silver highlights that are much, much smaller than photosites. And we want to emulate their behavior, right? So we are adding texture, but it's not like a looking visibly, texture to us. The visible part of the texture is going to be done with print, which is really what happens, by the way. We don't really see a lot of grain on negative. Sometimes we do if it's a little underexposed, but normally no. And especially the modern stocks, they're so they have such a fine grain. The grain comes from printing, right? The real grain that we normally know, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and say, okay, instead of going like ultra fine or fine, whatever, I'll go like maybe for strong. Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of see, maybe I want to just also maybe and elevate it a little bit. So I can do still, master control 05 is very conservative, by the way. You can always increase it a little bit more, right? Like this. Okay. And that's going to then give you a much, much stronger feel to how your grain is going to be. But again, I'm not killing it with grain. The grain for me shouldn't be like an effect. It just should help my image. And then I'll also add a little bit gate weaver and flicker. These things are so subtle, but do miracles, in terms of the kind of how image just becomes more alive. Okay, so you see, this is basically my grain now, like without it, right, and with. So you see how okay, there is a little breathing, and this breathing comes from the fact that we have to apply a little extra zoom in because we need to apply a little weaver, right? And the image feels much more analog, much more organic, right? Much nicer. So there we go. And and it doesn't look like, oh my God, apply the grain as an effect, and this is running in full 4K resolution and fully real time. Like, look at it. I just press play. I'm on M1 MacBook Pro. I'm not even, actually, I'm going to stop saying that M1 MacBook very soon as my M4 arrives, which I'm already have put an order through. This is going to be my new toy. All right, so let's go. So now I got basically into some sort of, ballpark. Now I want to go and spend a little bit effort to actually fine tune this. Okay, because I all I did was did a quick match, and so on. So I really like, for example, this particular shot. It kind of gives me that kind of tonality. I'm just going to open it a little bit to kind of say, okay, this is roughly what I want. And then I'm going to go into my AI node. And in AI node, I'm going to say, hey, save this as a reference. I want now this shot, right, to be my reference, okay? So then let me just go and refresh all the thumbnails. So I just go update all thumbnails. So then I see, how things really look like. So let's start here. So this shot obviously doesn't really work. It's a little too dark and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, oh, and look and see the windows as well. They're kind of definitely blowing out here, right? So what I'll do is I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to park it here in this frame. And then I'm going to go and say to my Colourlab AI matcher here, I'm going to say, match this now to my reference. And this is really that kind of feel of that scene, right? But then I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my lift, gamma, and gain of my plugin, which is the only thing, by the way, that's changing at the moment, and saturation, right? And I'm going to go and apply keyframes. So I'll apply keyframe to all of this. And I know this is a little bit like, Da Vinci style, you have to press 1 million times, Da Vinci loves you to do a lot of clicking, huh? Anyway, maybe we'll find a way to have one keyframe for everything. But right now I have to put 13 keyframes to get to see the L2Y. Anyway, and then what I do then is I go then back to my first, frame, which is very dark. And then I'm going to go and match it again, right? So I match it again now. Okay, so now you see I basically now have a transition, right? So then I go a little bit further. Let's see here. Okay, this one's also like a little bit too much, right? So I'm going to go and match it here. And then now I see I'm fixing that one. Then I'm coming to my next keyframe, which is already fixed. Then these boys are a little bit too dark. So I'm going to go match it again. And every time I press match, I'm basically applying a keyframe and I'm dynamically basically making now, as you see, this shot really works. And then here, we also want to go and match it again because, we want that window detail to be back, right? So you see, look at it now. So this is basically going to be now the scene, like the shot. So everything is slowly, like dynamically being matched, right? And moved. So you see now that's highlights coming down. Now we're lifting a little bit the mid-tone up, right? You see, we're lifting it up. And then now, it's getting a little bit moody here, but then we also like have corrected it. And now this shot looks actually pretty dope, right? The way it should be. Okay, then I'm gonna go through the shots and I'm gonna see how they feel like. Is there anything here that stands out for me, right? And then here, for example, look at this shot. So I would say, this one feels a little odd, right? Because when we jump between the two, it's odd. So why don't I go and just say, let me match this guy here. Okay, that's much better. And then I'm going to go and apply another keyframe here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Excellent. And then let me see. Now he moves over there. The camera follows him. And then here we have the same problem, right? A little bit. So I'm going to go now here and I'm going to say, hey, give me a match. Nice. So you see, I basically am matching that one now. And that's okay. The end of this shot is absolutely fine. All right. So this one's actually pretty good, but I think it's going to go a little bit, stronger. Let me see here, here, here. What I'm going to do just on this shot, and now I'm going to do this overall, I'll just do a little trim. And I'm going to trim a little shadow here. I just want a little bit like that. That's all. But because I'm using a separate node, I don't need to now worry about keyframes. This overall trim on the shadow happened, for all of the keyframes that happened on the top. All of this is looking good, 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 good. This shot. Let me see, what happens here if I was to do a match, right? That's a little bit too much. And then I'm just going to go and just bring it down in a mid-tone like this, and then a little bit shadow. So clearly, I do need to sometimes just on some of these white shots, bring some of the crunch, and I do this manually. All right, this is good. This is good. This is good. This is good. This is fine, fine, fine. This one's maybe a little too dark. So what would happen if I was to match that? Much better. Okay, great. So now I got a pretty much, I'm in a good shape, right? My timeline, except this shot here. This shot here is still not good. Let me actually just use this one here, and let me just drive it down a little bit more like this, and then open more gain. I think it needs a little bit more contrast. I think what's the problem with this shot is that we don't have enough like a light for some reason. So now it's better, right? Okay, great. So now I got all of this in a pretty good shape. Excellent. So now next thing is windows. So let's do that. So the first one is going to be my vignette. Okay, so it's already like there. And you see, because I set it up, I can just a little bit, just drive it down a little bit like this. And that's all I need. I don't need a strong vignette. And then what I do is I'm just going to go and select all of the shots that I have. Just need to move my okay, like this. And then I do color, and then I say ripple no changes to selected clips. So now effectively I have copied this vignette to all of the clips, right? The next thing I'm gonna go is I'm gonna say, all right, so then I have a spotlight. Okay, that's a good one. I need it definitely on, for example, this shot. I'm gonna open it up just a little bit like this. And then let me see where else I need this spotlight. So not that I need it here. Let me see where else. This one's good. This one's good. Uh, I think I'm good now. I'm just going to apply it to these two, and then we'll see later. We can always go more. So ripple no changes to, oh no, ripple no changes to selected clips. There we go. All right, so now I have this applied to these two. Then if I feel like I have too much of a window on some of the shots, what I do, I never really change the actual, grading. I go to the transparency here, and I just, drive down a little bit of that. So that really reduces the intensity of my window in a much nicer way. Now find it, okay? Then I'm gonna go and use my grad. So let me actually first use this one. So this grad here, and I'm gonna go and just, open it up a little. That's better, okay? And then let me see, so the window, you see the light's coming here from this side, so that's not good. So this is all, every time I have light coming from that angle, like here, lights coming from the other side, then it's from this side, then it's from this side, from this side, this is the other side, then from this side, let's see, this side, this is the other side of the light, and this side as well. So I just selected that one, color, ripple, and node to selected clips. Ripple no changes to selected clips. Excellent. So we got that. And then I have the other side. So basically now the light's coming from this side. So I'm going to use a different grad for that. So for that, I'm going to use this guy here. And then what I'll do is I'm just going to go and lift it just a little bit. So, it opens up a little bit, as if, because this is kind of how the window is, and we're going to just elevate that a little bit like this. And then I'm going to say, okay, then this one doesn't need it. This one needs it. This one is not. This one is not. This one definitely needs it. This one definitely needs it. And then let's see, people sitting here need it. And this one doesn't need it. Okay, great. Color, ripple, no changes to selected clips. Okay, cool. So there we go. So now I'm basically got my grads in the place. Okay, I have now everything in a kind of pretty good shape very quickly, as you can tell. See, that's very nice. It's very nice. So you see, I got my, I'm going to just double check it quickly so that I can just make sure that everything's like, working really well. Excellent. Perfect. Right. I can do maybe like a little bit more tweaking, but that's what I'm going to leave, for, like a next pass, so what I want to do now is I want to just, really get everything in a good ballpark. The only other thing as I'm looking at it now, I'm thinking I would love to cool it down a little. I think I'm still very warm. So what I'll do now is I'm going to actually go to my scene setting here, and I will cool it down, means less red, right? So I'm going to just go to my offset here, and I will use this number here, and I'm just going to go and take like a few points of red out, because that really is going to do a magical job by just, when I'm doing film emulations, this offsetting is really what works really well. So this is kind of like what I like. And then again, I'm just going to go and select everything in the scene, because this is the whole scene. And then I'm going to say, hey, color, and then ripple node changes to selected clips. You can also have a shortcut for that, by the way, guys. And now we got it. So you see, so now basically my shots are, yes, they're warm, but I have given a little printer light style warmth in them. I can basically now go and just, what's missing here in this shot is just a little bit more openness here. But instead of doing the whole frame, I'm just going to put a little bit of my, so this is beautiful now. Okay. So now you see, like, how long did it take me? I don't know, like, 15, 20 minutes. And by the way, I'm talking, so I'm also explaining, so I'm not really going as fast as I could, right? You will be much faster at this once you do it a few times, because you'll have like you'll have a more practice and more focus, and you won't have to. I love it. It's very good. Okay, great. So that would be like an example to how you can now combine, right, a power of desktop application that analyzes everything in one go with the power of plugin that allows you to fine-tune things. And I really love this, because in the past, I would probably do the whole tutorial just with one shot. It would take me about half an hour just to show you how to do a single shot. And now I don't do just in the same time a single shot. I do the whole scene, and I don't just do the fucking look. I actually do the look and secondaries and match. I mean, you have to understand that that's really reality, what we can do now with AI. I mean, at the same amount of time I used to do just to build a single look, I can now go and grade everything with secondaries, and matching and tracking and keyframing. It's great. I love this. I love this. Anyway, so this is like a one example of that. I want to show you another example, and then we're going to go to Q&A. This is another way how to do it, and this is just like for all of you guys who don't want to complicate yourself life like this. You may be not working on scripted content or whatever. I just want to show you something which is quite an interesting approach. And so what I'll do now is I'm going to just get my clips from Resolve quickly on my timeline, and I'm going to go back to the same example we did last time. The desert example, and I want to just show you how you can again use these two applications really creatively, like so that you can just benefit from both of them. So let's say, for example, this shot, and client has an idea, has to look like some sort of spacey, completely, whatever, right? So then I happen to have here a desert kind of library, and I go and say, oh, wow, look at this shot. I mean, this is like totally desert. How about this, right? So then I go and say, okay, match these two, please. And then I have it, right? But again, it looks like a little bit over the top, right? So what I'll do then again, I come to my look designer. I say, give me an FPE. I'm going to go and apply also like a film emulation. And I know what I'm going to do here. I'm going to use the MPF emulation, because, that one is pretty, kosher. And then I'm going to go and just open up a little bit my push and pull. So because I don't want it to be too dark, right? Like this. Okay. And then definitely apply a little crunch, and maybe in terms of the contrast, yeah, I already have it K1, but maybe just a little stronger, K0. They're all Kodak print contrasts, right? So you see, like, and now I got this, from kind of screaming to something that feels actually pretty nice, right? Oh, and I'm not going to do ENR. Sorry, I want to have FPE, because I don't want it to be too such. That's it. So you see, like, I still have a relatively high amount of saturation. You see my saturation is going pretty high, but it's not crazy high like this, right? So it's pretty good. And you see, I feel that they really match much better now. So, I don't, when I do matching, right, when I'm doing building things, I don't necessarily always rely on the CDL alone. I do have, full power of look designer here, and I'm, utilizing it really. So what I do then is I say, hey, you be now my reference. Come on, mate, give me, I'm trying to move how am I going to move Zoom now? My zoom got stuck. There we go. All right. So you be now my reference. I'll say the shot that I build, I want it to be my reference. And look at this now. Now that I just set it as a reference, it's all I had to do. I didn't have to do anything else. You go back into your DaVinci. You basically say, all right, give me, I'm going to leave my first node empty. On my second node, I'm going to now apply Colourlab AI. There we go. Then I'm going to say to Colourlab AI, hey, we're dealing here with red camera, by the way, red, white, gamut, RGB. I want you to output it to the Rec 709, please. So I know I want to work very simply now. So this is what it gives me out of the box, right? And then I go and I say, select my reference. And then I go into my users and I scroll all the way down here, right? We're going to have to improve this guy. And then see here is basically that shot that I created, that reference that I built. It's already automatically saved for you, right? So you don't really have to import or export or do anything like that, because now desktop application and plugin and look designer and soon Grain Lab and Film Lab, they will all share the same resources. There is a same folder on your drive with subfolders where all of these things are placed. So now all I do is I'm going to say, okay, please you be my reference. And then I can go and say, hey, match it, right? And now I basically got these shots, to start working. So I can now just basically go and say, all right, match this one, please. Fantastic, right? And then I come to this shot and say, all right, give me this one. And I'm going to go and say match it. So you see, it's kind of, I don't always have to complicate, my life. I don't always have to go completely crazy in terms of, like too many nodes. If I just quickly really want to do things or something like that, I can do that. It's not a really problem. And then, I can then always say, all right, let me just, adjust this image a little bit more like this. Maybe I'll desaturate it a notch. You can do like a, your fine tuning, a little bit grading afterwards, so actually I think I'm going to just copy this grade to other nodes. Fantastic. So yeah, so it's not always, super complicated workflow. Sometimes you can just work simply like, hey, I want to just, get things, a little bit going. But I also want to show you the benefit. I find that when I'm building the look, I'm a little faster, a little bit more intuitive because I have a nicer interface here. And it doesn't really change anything to me because, once I've saved this shot, once I applied it as a match, right? Once I basically show, once it's saved as a reference, it's effectively available in this folder here for you, right? And this is the folder. It's basically called look. So you just go to users. This is on Mac, users, shared Colourlab AI. And this is where you find everything. Your DRX files, your references, the show looks even I saved, I have, the ones that show looks that I build, the EXO1 files, and so on and so on and so on. So basically you have all of the resources there, and they are now shared freely between plugin and desktop and look designer and so on. So yeah, it makes actually, life much easier. Okay, so that would be kind of what I had to show you today. And then I'm just going to go now to my chat and let's see how we're doing with questions. So Robert says, what is your favorite way of integrating Color Pro Film Lab with Colourlab AI? I'm going to show you this next week. Maybe that's a fantastic question. That's a question for another live training. So this is going to be a theme of our Friday training. So working Film Lab and Color Lab, right? Film Lab plus Color Lab. And that's, I think it's a great question because we're releasing Film Lab next week. And I'm going to show you, like, Film Lab lives for me on a timeline level, but I'll be very detailed about it. You're going to see. I mean, and that, by the way, takes this whole image to another another level. It's really interesting. Question, Louis, can we do versions? So there are no versions inside the new Colorlab 3, but you guys keep asking for it, so I'm going to have to bring them in. Okay, fine. We'll bring the versions. When I'm in the Colourlab AI Pro and I fetch from DaVinci Resolve, my 3D does don't show. That's very true. That's absolutely true. The R3D files are not supported in desktop at the moment. We are going to release next week first support for an add-on, which is called Tin Man. And when you have that, you can get a license for all the raw files, including red files. So, basically that's how we're going to do it. How is this color managed project? No color management. I manage everything with nodes. That's the way how I color manage. Never use, by the way, projects, always use, nodes for matching. We always love it. What would the IDT be for ProRes 42HQ footage? Well, I don't know where does this footage originate from, because, like if you have a ProRes, it can be any color space. So Paul, just let me know, where did you got it from and how did you do it? Michael says, how do you activate outputting through Blackmagic Ultra Studio 3G? You don't at the moment. The desktop application can't do it, but we are going to have it like around December time. So we basically, have got initial support, and it will be ready. What we're just figuring out now is just kind of balancing when DaVinci has got a right and when we have a right to use it. So it will be ready very, very soon. So yeah, it's coming. So we're getting that done, no problem. So really, like, for us, the priority was to get all this raw format supported. Then we're improving playback for 4K material. We do a lot of background processing, and 4K is still very slow, but we found a way how we're going to accelerate it. So this is coming next. Then SDI is coming next. And then the new models are being added to it. So this is really like the pipeline to what you're going to see we'll be developing. Can you set reference still from set as your match point, or does it have to be built in Colourlab? No, you can do anything. There is no limitation to what can be your reference, Kyle. It can be imported shot. It can be your own reference. It can be any reference, really, But in this workflow that I showed you today, you are best using your own shot as a reference, because what you're doing is you're fine-tuning your sequence, right? You're not inventing a shot and you want to bring something else, right? No, you're fine-tuning your sequence. And for that, AI is always going to give you a best result if you have shot from the sequence, not something from the outside, right? So you're, it's easier then for the AI to create the best match. So that's what you want to do. We need to a list of grain numerical explanation. Yes, that's coming. I'm preparing like a PDF manual for that, and we're building like also online, a tutorial. So that's hopefully coming by the end of next week. I promise. Goran says, how to register for beta testing. Very good question, Goran. Why don't you email help at colorlab.ai and just say, hey, Dado, I just saw your stream. I want to join beta, and just say, can I please join beta? And just please do that, and I'll put you on a beta list. And basically, you will get, a questionnaire, and you have to submit these questionnaires, and then you're going to stay on beta. So no problem. So guys, I really hope you liked it. I really hope this was useful. I really hope it gives you an inspiration as well, to how you can utilize this wonderful technology to, be more efficient and work better and faster. We are looking forward to receiving your feedback, and keep an eye. We are literally like scheduling something new coming out almost every week now until Christmas. So we're in actually full power at the moment. So yeah, I thank you very much for joining. We had a really nice group today, and keep an eye on the follow-up email where we're going to share the note tree, and we're going to send you also a recording in case you did manage to do it. But also we're going to post this on our YouTube channel, and you will be able, if you subscribe to YouTube channel, to be notified when it's there as well. That's also a very good thing. By the way, there is going to be a special offer for anybody who has a FilmLab and wants to get Colourlab AI Pro, and anyone who has a Colourlab AI wants to get FilmLab, because there is a crossover of two plugins inside. We discount it and you can do it. And not just that, you then qualify to buy it, because as you know, FilmLab AI is not available on the open market anymore. You're going to have to make an official request to be able to acquire the license. On that note, I wish you all a wonderful Friday. Enjoy your weekend, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all next week. So take care, everybody. Thank you, Luis. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. See you soon. Bye.